This is Jeff Shine, the voice of Carlos in Resident Evil 3, and you're listening to the Let's Talk Resident Evil podcast.
What is going on, everyone? Anthony here, and welcome back to another episode of the Let's Talk Resident Evil podcast. And in today's episode, I will be reviewing the Resident Evil 2022 Netflix live action series. Yeah, I know, that's a lot to take in there. But yes, live action, another live action adaptation, and I will be reviewing each episode. I'm going to be going through each episode, breaking it down. I have a bunch of notes that I'm going to discuss and ideas and stuff that I want to get into. And of course, I'm going to be discussing spoilers and stuff like that. So if you didn't finish the show yet, watch my video review, which is spoiler free, and then come back here and we can kind of go into everything together. But yes, I will be going through the show. So if you watch the video review, I didn't explain a lot of the in-depth stuff because that is going to be going into territory where, you know, it could spoil people and stuff like that. And plus, it goes into a lot longer than just a 12-minute video. So let's get right into it. All right. This is an 8-episode season. So this was, you know, a lot of time that I put into putting these notes down, reviewing it. And I do this so you don't have to, you know. I think that's important to kind of note because, you know, I try to put out these reviews and be honest so I can let people know if it wastes their time or if it doesn't waste their time. You know, obviously it's part of the content creation that I do, doing this all the time, covering all Resident Evil stuff. But, you know, you could watch something like this and hopefully this can be more entertaining and you can have some kind of, you know, you can take away something in terms of, you know, whether or not you think it is going to be worth watching or not. So let's get right into it. This is episode 1. Welcome to the new Raccoon City. And as we know, the new Raccoon City is in the past timeline with the Wesker children and Wesker trying to, you know, raise his kids in this community that is New Raccoon City. Once he gets an umbrella gig to work with Evelyn Marcus. And then we go to the, you know, present timeline, which is what it opens up with, which is London in a, you know, post-apocalyptic like state. Everything is run down. It looks like the world is pretty much over. And they call the timelines, you know, before the end and after the end. So when shit hit the fan, that is when we got, you know, everything pretty much got destroyed and everyone got separated from their homes. Some people didn't make it out. The ratio to infected and survival rate is pretty drastic. I'll get into that in a little bit. But, you know, Jade has a video call with her family in this, you know, I guess in this little world, you can still have cell signal or video call signal or whatever, you know, so I guess they made it work. They don't really explain how they're able to do that. But they're able to video call for a minute, and she's kind of like out on her own. You know, we see her, she sets up these booby traps with these zombies. She, you know, cuts a bunny rabbit and it bleeds and it brings out the zombies. But they're not called zombies in this show. They're called zeros. So that is the term. You know, you always got to have a term for these zombies in these shows because there's so many of the zombie stuff nowadays. You know, it's kind of saturated in our culture. And yeah, let's add running zombies in the mix because, you know, that hasn't been done a bunch. You know, so has the slow Romero zombies, you know, but I personally think that the slow zombies matter, you know, but they don't really care about what the fans want in the show. So let's continue on with the actual zero abilities, right? When she cuts the bunny, it's showing you that once it bleeds and it has the blood, they can sense it a lot better. The zeros that have been roaming on the earth for X amount of years, and that is going to be giving them, you know, the advantage, right? So the longer the infected have been around, the more grotesque they look. They have boils, they have, you know, you can see it on their skin, but they also have heightened senses with the, you know, the smell. So if you bleed and you cut yourself, and there's a scene during this where, you know, she cuts herself and it goes, you know, they end up chasing her, you know, and then that goes into the worm attack. So she gets attacked by the giant worm that we all saw in the trailer. there's no significance to this worm. It just kind of exists for the sake of being like, hey, it's a worm that's underground. There it is. And which is, it means nothing because it's not any particular creature. It's just a new worm that they kind of pulled. But it cuts to the new Raccoon City in the past, which is 2022. So the past is in 2022, and we are seeing, the kids kind of get uprooted from their homes, Jade and Billy. And I also thought it's interesting because, this scene when they're driving into the new Raccoon City, which is, again, we saw that on the trailer when Wesker's kind of riding in there and he's like, I think you guys are going to like this, blah, blah, blah. They set you up with a house. They set you up with everything. Umbrella's got you covered. They got you covered here. Jade and Billy, which is Wesker's children here. Billy is interesting because I can tell that they definitely, I don't know if you guys caught this, but they play Billie Eilish as they drive in. And Billie Eilish is spelled the same way, Billie, and her name is spelled Billy Wesker, Billie. So Billie Eilish, Billy Wesker, they definitely took that and just, all right, yeah, name it Billy. They're really taking the move in a hard way, as most kids do when you're kind of uprooting people and moving them and they don't know what's going on, especially when it's job-oriented, you know what I mean? Jade is taking it harder. Billy at first is just kind of like, hey, stop giving, Dad a hard time. She gives, like, the lady at the house a hard time, like the realtor lady, or I guess it's like someone a part of Umbrella, because everybody here is a part of Umbrella in some sense because it's their community. So everyone knows who Wesker is. But, in this show, Wesker is, in fact, working under Evelyn. So it's not like he's, the top of his, the top of the food chain here. He is working under Evelyn Marcus. And that goes into it cuts back, because that's what it does a lot. It cuts back from, the past timeline and then the present, which is past the end. And we get back to the worm chase. So the worm, so she actually hits her head, pretty much gets knocked out. And as the worm's about to, go in for the kill, we have these random mercenary groups kind of come up and start shooting up on the worm. And the worm's dead in less than like 30 seconds. So they kill off the worm there. And then we go back to the school. And, of course, with the generic, first day of school trouble, and I don't know if I can fit in. I know it happens to people, so I know it could be relatable. But I don't think that in... Okay. So let's just set this up. So they go, they have lunch. They have the lunch time. They show it. Jade is sitting with her friends, which is kind of weird because... I guess they all just made friends just like that, I guess. So, but it's supposed to show the contrast between, Jade fitting in and then Billy not fitting in. So Billy sits down with this chick who's like, just sitting there minding her own business. I guess there's, or no, she sits down at this table and then this other chick sits down. It's either or. But a fight begins to break out between Billy and this chick, and I forget her name. I just wrote down a girl here because I think her name, I know the name of her dad, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. She gets in a fight with this girl because she makes fun of Billy because Billy is vegan and she's wearing a vegan shirt. I'm not making this up. So basically she says, oh, I just went hunting this summer and I blah, 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 and this, and that. Basically, she gets the shit kicked out of her. Jade does, pretty much nothing about it in that moment because, it's, nothing was done at that moment, In real life, if that actually happened, that a sibling would probably jump in. So within all of this, Jade actually steps in and she attacks this chick that fucked up Billy in a bathroom stall. She has like the mascot, the new Raccoon City mascot on to kind of cover up who it was. So she jumps her in a bathroom stall and beats the shit out of her. So in that case, the parents get called. It's a big thing because, it's always like, the innocent person gets blamed. When Billy was getting beat up, no one cared. So this got the parents involved. So this chick has a dad named Dave who works for Umbrella. And then Wesker has to come down to the office and talk about, the fight, right? Wesker comes down and he pretty much, chews out the parent, pretty much saying, look, I'm an important man. One person can do my job. How many people can do your job, Dave and Umbrella? And he basically said, like, if you do X, Y, and Z, press charges, this, and that. And of course, that's what he wanted to do before Wesker walks in. Wesker walks in and he immediately, shits himself, basically. This is what he says in quotes. I had to go back and play it. He says that no one will hire you. Google, Facebook. He says even Pornhub will shred your resumes. That's what Wesker says. He says that to him. So, long story short, nothing happens. They're all for Umbrella. Even like the principal lady is like, we all work for Umbrella. We can work something out. This, and that, right? And then he's like, yeah, she'll take a mental health day, tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. Which means, she'll just not be in school because I said so. So Wesker maneuvers himself. Flash forward to the present day where things are shit. Jade gets back into this camp. It's kind of like a wall, kind of like a fortified little area with these mercenaries. And, they talk about a little bit of their history. Jade's starting to kind of get into it. We hear some of these mercenaries talk. And we get to know that the zombies are, they get better smell over time. They talk about that. They talk about these abilities. But there's 300 million survivors compared to 6 billion zombies. So, or zeros, right? So it's definitely on a bigger scale. Mr. Baxter is a Umbrella guinea pig that comes in with the soldiers as the camp starts to recognize who Jade is and that she has a target on her back, and the Umbrella soldiers come in. Now, at the same time, Billy and Jade in the 2022, in the past, the kids of Billy and Jade are going into the Umbrella lab to expose them for animal testing, which has been, said they don't do that. They've won awards from, PETA that they haven't done animal testing and everything like that, right? So, but obviously it's covered up and they want to know the truth. So they steal the key card for Wesker and the doorway that asks for like video or voice as well. They were able to get through the security. So this is all kind of happening at the same time. The camp's getting shot up in the future with Jade, and then we have the past, which is them as kids. They're trying to expose Umbrella. So she's in there, Billy and Jade, they get in there, they get into the bottom. The lab looks pretty cool. I thought the lab looked, aesthetically looked dope. And they go in there and take pictures of everything, but what lurks in a little crate that they're not ready to take a picture of as they open it is an infected T-virus Cerberus. So the T-virus Cerberus, and this is pretty much a big turning point for the whole show right here, is they get attacked. They get attacked by this dog, and they aren't ready for it. And it gets to the point where they get chased. There's a few scenes where it jumps through the window. The references they try to throw in there with the dog through the window. Ha 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 ha. Jump up and down, whatever. And then they jump through the window. And, of course, the zombie dog bites someone, and it's Billy. The zombie dog bites Billy, and right as the fire extinguisher is conveniently on the wall, they smack the shit out of the dog. Jade kills it and realizes that, Billy is pretty much, she pretty much dies and then comes back. And she gets, she comes back alive, but obviously now she has this, T-virus, infected dog bite on her, and we don't know how that's going to affect her leading to the next episode. So episode 1 ends with an infected Billy and a Jade that jumps off the rooftop, and we don't know the fate of either one, and that leaves off on a cliffhanger that goes right into episode 2, The Devil You Know, which goes even further into what's going on with Wesker. Wesker covers up the incident. There's a pile of blood. That's why you see him rubbing blood on his face, because he's making it seem like he got into an attack with the Cerberus while he was there late night at the lab. Cerberus broke out. It tried to attack me. This, and that. Had to kill it. So that is how he covers up the daughter's mistakes. Evelyn doesn't really believe that, but she does show up, and we know that they have a work history. They worked with each other for a while. And we kind of get this kind of work relationship between, Evelyn and Wesker. Evelyn has a trust for Wesker, vice versa, but she's also still, very money hungry, very, we're just trying to make this, profit off of Joy, and she's really into just trying to get it out for the top dollar. And while Wesker is more analytical and he's like, hey, listen, if something has these problems, we should look at it. But she's like, no, let's, we have to do that. So I think the one thing that kind of shows right away with Evelyn is that her and her, family life, she has a wife called Diana, and she's already, arguing with her on the phone, and it's like falling apart. So it's very hard for a lot of these people that are working all the time, because we kind of see that already with Wesker and his kids. He's working all the time, work, never is around, it's not really important to him. So it kind of shows that a little bit, and Evelyn is obviously a direct reflection of that as well. But between Wesker and what his actual kind of like inside of his character, we see that Wesker each day, and we kind of see this with his, clock and his little stopwatch that he has that kind of counts everything down, is we see him pretty much almost collapse, and he has to inject something into his neck, so he has this, he's like, and he's all fucking, fucked up. And we see the infection of the T virus kind of take over Billy in this episode, how it does affect her. But it's also not affecting her like it normally does. So again, Wesker is, trying to, again, kind of have this relationship with them where he's like, listen, guys, I'm trying to help you out here, but, this also has to, stay between us. The fact that, like, this actually got out, because this is pretty serious, but it's not affecting her like normal T-virus victims would be affected, right? So this episode kind of goes into that, and Baxter, the attack on Jade, as she tries to get smuggled out through this group of people that are trying to sneak out. Of course, Baxter comes back and has these attack drones and immediately starts attacking them, as we get a scene in the lab where a rat breaks out in Wesker's lab that, of course, is being tested on, which obviously is never a good sign. So that is how episode 2 ends, and it really focused more on the past here, but it focused a little bit on the present, with Jade trying to escape. But again, it's trying to kind of balance out these two storylines, and I don't know how well it really did it throughout the 8 episodes in season 1. So that leads us to episode 3, which is called The Light, and it opens up with Evelyn being interviewed here, and she's explaining that she is the CEO of the new Umbrella and this whole Joy production. She's in charge of it, and she mentions that her father, which her father is James Marcus, was pushed out of the company in the past, and she insists on kind of rebuilding that legacy and keeping that alive, keeping it going. And, it's a very sketchy kind of interview, right? Because you can see through her and stuff like that. You can see she's very not all there. And, she really wants Joy to not represent the old Raccoon City. She wants this to be kind of like a new era for them, right? Which, of course, that leads to a meeting with Umbrella. And Wesker wants to delay Joy, right? So the thing is, too, is like, he insists on delaying it. She insists on just pushing it through. And, okay, we could put this on the warning label. We could do this. We could do that. So she tries to push all that stuff through at the meeting table. Wesker brings out the rat, and he puts it on the table, and he shows the effects of, of what can actually happen with Joy. We can't do this. This isn't right. And then we get a scene in the present day with the infected, and the Lickers here are all in the tunnel. The group are trying to sneak through this, the dark tunnel, and of course the Lickers are there where you don't want them to be, because of course they're always in the way. But they even fuck up the Umbrella soldiers here. Even Baxter's like, holy shit, so there's a bunch of them down here, and they even attack most of the group that was trying to be smuggled out and try to leave. And it's I would say for this scene, it's pretty cool. I mean, this isn't a bad scene. This is more entertaining. I kind of wish we had a scene like this in episode 2, personally. But yeah, the one thing I can say is that the liquors look good. They always kind of looked good in the live adaptations. They make them look, pretty solid to the games. They don't really change them that much. And I thought the attacks were pretty cool. I wish they had more of the claw, because they do a lot of the tongue kills, but I wish they actually had more of the slicing, like they did in even Resident Evil 2 remake rather, where they jump down and claw the fuck out of you. They have some of that, but like I just kind of wish they had a little bit more. So that goes back to Evelyn. Now she's pushing Joy, and Wesker has this idea where he's like, yo, I'm going to make this cure. It has to be necessary. We don't want to, repeat of what happened before. And of course, you can profit off of a cure. If there's a cure for something, you can also profit off of it. That's what Wesker says. That's his selling point to Evelyn. And she says, okay, but only work on it on, on these specific hours, like not in time with Joy. We still put Joy first. So he convinces her to, make this cure. So Wesker goes off to work on that. So we go to Billy, who is going back to school, even though she's infected, because she's, getting better, but she's also not getting better. She's trying to show her dad that she's getting better, but she still has these problems. The sound still affect her. The bright lights still affect her, right? She has all these hallucinations of just like, the dog on the table, right? Where kids are just kind of hanging out. So there's a bunch of stuff going on. She's clearly not ready. She runs to the bathroom. She has the RE3 remake Jill mirror scene. They kind of re-emulated that where she looks at herself infected in the mirror. But it's, again, kind of showing the implications of her getting infected, right? And it's kind of unraveling. So we go to the future now, or the present, I should say. And that is going into where Jade is now. Jade is with this couple that have this, infected kid with them, so it's kind of like the generic, like, oh, we have this kid, he's an infected, we, because when they were smuggling all those people out, they didn't tell her, obviously. So the kid's infected, and as they're trying to hide, this is after the liquor attack, we actually get the, also this character, Liam, has a Hydra, but it literally is just there for show, and then it's done, because even more people get fucked up as the spiders appear in the tunnel. So we actually get a liquor attack and a spider attack in this episode. Not too bad in terms of seeing some BOW goodness, but it's a shame a lot of this stuff is very short-lived. Now, the spiders look really cool, but obviously they have the upper hand. They're stabbing people. They stab the dad once he tries to beat the spider with a pipe, which I know you could use a pipe even in Resident Evil Outbreak, but holy shit, I mean, I would never even think to use that against a big-ass spider. That was very interesting to see. But, the spiders themselves were cool. We didn't get them in even Welcome to Raccoon City. We didn't even get them in the old Resident Evil movies. So to kind of see them here, they looked pretty good. They didn't look bad. They kind of look like how I would expect them to look in, 2022 with the effects and everything like that. So I forgot to mention, back at the school, there is a kid named Simon who is hacking into, well, I guess he's able to get anime from, torrent sites or something. I'm not even kidding. They mentioned that. They're like, oh, don't you just use Nya and something? And they're like, oh, well, torrent sites are blocked here in this community. Or like, this is stuff they actually say. I'm not kidding. Maybe he was actually getting them anime porn. That's probably what they didn't mention, because all these kids are huddling around at school. They're like, oh my God. And then when they finally go and start talking, she, obviously gets on his, sweet side and starts to boss him around a little bit. Jade, that's what Jade kind of does. Billy kind of sees him in passing, doesn't really, kind of gives him bad vibes because she's dealing with her, infected state. When she was going to the school too, kind of gave him, wrong vibes. But we find out that this kid Simon that is hacking into Umbrella, finding some of these clips and videos, he is the son of Evelyn Marcus. So that is what we find out at the end of episode 3. And we find this out as Jade tries to finally escape the tunnels. And when she does, Baxter comes out. And then we have the French soldiers from the rebels, basically. They're kind of like rebels. And they are up in like this, like they're all pretty much in this like hill. and they're all like ready. And as soon as Baxter comes in, they shoot him immediately. Shoot him right through. I think they shoot him in like the shoulder or something, and because he doesn't die, but he gets shot, and Jade gets captured, and she gets knocked out. So she gets fucking punched the fuck out, and that's how episode 3 ends. Episode 3 at least had the spiders and the lickers here, so that was like one of the. It was less boring than some of the other episodes here. So let's get into episode 4, The Turn. Within hacking into everything in the past, in 2022, in the school, within hacking all that stuff, Simon helps Jade. They have a video call with someone who is emailing her about knowing about Umbrella, right? Knows about the inside. So it's like an anonymous person, but we find out that he comes in to call Jade at school, like a video call, but it gets interrupted as, class starts or whatever. And he's trying to ask her about the virus, about what happens if someone's been bitten. This guy knows about the stuff that Umbrella's covering up. It's always the one person in these shows that knows the truth, knows about what Umbrella used to do in Old Raccoon City. He is that person, right? He is like the person that is going to be trying to give this information out, right? So they set him up right away through those video calls, but you're not really sure who he is. In the beginning of this episode 4, he interviews the wife, the widow of the person that was attacked in the Mexico video with zeros running all around. So within all of these clips, you find out that he is unraveling everything on his own about Umbrella, and he finds out the truth. So again, that's how he becomes that character throughout the show. So we jump back to Caleres, France, which is, present day. Now Jade and Baxter are both tied up, and Baxter makes a SpongeBob reference. I'm not even kidding. I don't even know what it was. I just wrote down shitty SpongeBob reference from Baxter. And then it goes back to, Wesker. It kind of jumps back and forth here because they're captured. Wesker from the last episode was, told he was granted access to work on a cure. It's not working. He's getting frustrated. He screams at his team. Flash forward to Jade and Baxter, and they're taken to a meat grinder, which is what they call it in France. And it's ran by this guy named Felix, who is like a ripoff Johnny Depp. And he's in charge of the Brotherhood, which is they're like rebelling against Umbrella, right? But they have a bunch of sketchy shit that they're up to. So they get taken into this like prison area. The one thing that I liked about this episode is, there was entertaining gunfights and action sequences in the present day or post the end, in the post-apocalyptic world. You don't really get a lot of that in the past in 2022, because obviously it's leading up to when shit hit the fan. It's a lot of just like, boring stuff in between, to be honest with you. They could have made that stuff a lot more entertaining. I wasn't really too into the drama and the school and all that stuff. And it was just like, I don't know. It just didn't really hold my interest as much as seeing some of these, action scenes or some of the stuff that was actually moving. Now, this was a fun scene because everything was going down at this place in France, right? You got the chainsaw man that comes out of nowhere, who's supposed to be Dr. Salvador, but it's probably the goriest scene in the whole show. So it is a cool little scene, but obviously, it's just kind of there for the sake of being there. One of the newer aspects of the show is when they bring in new enemies. So they have this thing, a Mother Zero that is like the queen. She's like a screamer, and she screams loud as fuck. And the Zeros in the prison learn how to work and behave. So that's another thing that they kind of enable them to do. The queen, whatever you want to call her, she's able to call all of these, Zeros into the prison. So it's an all-out gunfight. Baxter makes a deal with Jade as they escape the prison that he'll try to help. And he headshots the Chainsaw Man in one shot, in one little shootout. And they start snapping. He's got the dual red 9. He's doing the flips and stuff like that. They're going back to back. Shit's going slow motion. This is at least entertaining because there's a lot of boring shit in this show. Jade takes the chainsaw from the Chainsaw Man and beheads the queen, taking her head. So now she has the specimen, and that's how that big action sequence ends. So yeah, a lot of entertaining stuff going on there. But the anonymous man, kind of gets himself a label. His name is Mr. Rubio, and he explains himself as again, the person that knows a lot. He tries to get through to Billy and Jade, right? And he tries to tell them what happened with Raccoon. Wesker died in 2009. The daughters don't really have a record of existence, right? They just kind of exist. They don't have any kind of record. It's so funny, too, because this dude, Jade and Billy, Billy's still infected and she's dealing with this stuff, but she wants to party hardy. They want to go to a party. And this guy literally follows them and tracks them down. And it's so funny because he goes to the party and someone just screams, "Narc!" And he just everyone just leaves. He completely outs himself. He looks like a fucking creeper before he explains all this stuff. It's just so funny because it's just like, dude, this is everything you're not supposed to do when you're trying to look completely sketchy. This guy completely did that. And then we have the moment where Jade thinks that she's gonna die. She's backed up into a corner. It's a heartfelt moment. Again, the actors here, when they're in these emotional scenes, they do a really good job. These actors and actresses, I think some of them did a decent job with what they've had. I said that in my review. There's a couple positive things here that I want to say. So we have Baxter, and he ends up just dying, kind of like another forgettable character. As Jay tries to escape, he just gets, hoarded up on, so he can't, be badass anymore, and then he dies. And as Jade escapes, there's a helicopter that comes in as it cuts to black. And that's episode 4. So we're at the halfway point, right? And I just want to say that, I'm trying to recap this in a way, and also kind of talk about the events that happen. And I kind of wanted to format this a little bit differently, right? Because I know some people are like, man, you take a while to recap stuff. Well, I have bullet points of stuff I wanted to talk about, right? And opinion. That's why the stuff I'm talking about, I kind of give my insight on and say, I don't really, I wrote down the stuff I kind of felt like I wanted to say, right? So that's kind of what this is for, is just to kind of say, okay, everything I like, everything I don't like, or this is cheesy, that's cheesy. And so far, this is just, again, it kind of runs into that syndrome of not really knowing, who you want to satisfy, because, you still try to have these references in there, but I think at the end of the day, they did know who they want to satisfy, and it was all casual fans. You know what I mean? It just ended up becoming more of a show that is really just trying to take a lot of the stuff that some fans know, but then we're going to take this property because we have it, and we're just going to do our own thing. Fuck it. We're just going to do our own thing. We're going to make new things and things that never happened and all that stuff. And I think that with trying to jump back and forth, I just found myself, I was like, damn, I personally think I might have liked this a little bit better than what I actually, anticipated if they cut out the corny writing. And a lot of the corny writing, to be honest with you, is in 2022 when they jump back to that timeline. I wish maybe we got something that was in, the post-apocalyptic world, and that's it. Because then we would have constantly have stuff happening, and there wasn't all of this crazy shit going on. So because again, I don't even know, I know they're trying to give the explanation, but I just think that if you were going to make it so different, you might as well have just stuck to one timeline. So the pacing would have been better, because the one thing I see in these 4 episodes we talked about so far, with these points of these characters coming in and these little moments happening that are leading up to bigger moments here, I just wasn't really invested, with these new characters personally. I just thought the writing for them wasn't very good, and we don't have any really original characters here to really fall back on. We have Wesker, and we have, we'll get into that, but yeah. So far with the halfway point, I was very just kind of bored, to be honest with you. I was just like, damn, this is going on for another 4 episodes. It's kind of a drag. some episodes are, again, more entertaining than others, but it was just, again, as I get into it, this last like batch is probably the worst of it. So what we're about to get into is probably just like, I don't even know. I can't even like scream and yell about this because I'm trying to just be as leveled as I can, because this is just like pretty ridiculous, some of the stuff that they did. But anyway, so now we are on episode 5, titled Home Movies, which is a episode that really takes place in the past in 2022. So it's a little bit of a drag. Not much really happens here, but just a lot of, I mean, they try to move shit along, but again, it's just very like, ugh. But Wesker is called to the lab because they did arrest the Rubio guy, Herman Rubio, right? He's from the Baja Post. And he is, interrogated by Evelyn, but Evelyn gets Wesker involved. He's like, come on, where's the old Wesker? Come out, interrogate him. And he really gets pissed at him when he finds out that Rubio knows his daughters and that he's been talking to them about what's been going on. And that's when he snaps. That's when he gets, pissed. And I remember we saw footage of that in the trailer where he's, getting angry, right? But during this scene, it's talked about, what he knows and if he gets this information out, right? And Evelyn, she says, I'm pretty sure she says this, I'm not making this up. She says 4chan virgins would only believe him. I wrote that down because I had to rewind it and I was like, oh, I'm sorry, what? And again, the writing really suffers here in the past here, right? So that brings us to Billy and Jade. They're trying to find records of themselves existing. They're trying to find, the birth certificates, right? They find a tablet underneath his bed, and Simon hacks it or whatever. Jade tries to tell Simon the truth about Raccoon City, and he's just like, bullshit, fuck off. That's not real. And when he's on the computer, he finds files of William Birkin. He's like, for some reason, there's files of a man named William Birkin. Yeah. Because he would just have files of William Birkin when the whole point of Raccoon City was to, destroy it, not leave any evidence. Why does he just have William Birkin? Anyway, that's just, again, just there for the sake of reference. It holds no weight, right? But they find an email that's banked away just in case of an emergency that would send out, auto-send to them, which is pretty much an escape route. It gives them a bag. It gives them cash, passports, stuff like that, to pretty much start a new life. Like if the shit hit the fan, right? And they find this by playing the Moonlight Sonata on the piano, which is something that they used to do when they were younger. So they throw a Moonlight Sonata reference in there. Again, just very like, what the hell? But, the daughters are still arguing over the truth about Wesker. Billy doesn't really want to accept it still. She's kind of against the idea that he could be someone that's capable of all this shit, right? But the real ticket here is when they find the basement. So the basement is part of the, escape route, right? The basement and the lab, because we all know the labs kind of are always underground in these umbrella facilities, always kind of lay underneath the actual town. And when they go under there, kind of like a, now that I'm thinking of it, they always like doing the home movies thing, right? They find the movies in Welcome to Raccoon City and it explains the story. They find the movies here and it explains the background. I mean, that's been done twice at this point, right? So, but they find tapes of Lisa Trevor. And, Lisa Trevor looks good in the tape, but it's just her underground, and it's like, it's Wesker saying, if anything happens, shoot that bitch, and they hear that and they're like, what the hell? That can't be him, right? So yeah, they find all of those tapes of them, experimenting with people, Lisa Trevor being one of them. Again, it's trying to kind of fill in that past. The tape was, very short-lived. Lisa Trevor looked cool, but it was, just, again, didn't do much. She didn't snap any of the heads off of anybody in this movie. So she probably wasn't taking steroids yet. But, Wesker, when he finds them down there, though, because the fire pretty much starts, which is like, burning all the evidence, right? He comes down and he tells them the truth. Wesker comes down and he's like, you know what? He tries to tell them that he made them stronger specifically, right? So the embryo and the ways that you can select and edit certain traits, he was able to do that for them. So he was able to explain to them that, like, yes, like, there's some stuff going on here. You guys are, a little bit different. So Wesker sits there and explains the truth and tells Billy about what's happening with her and maybe how it's not affecting her. And then she has a question like, oh, so it's not like the C virus? And I'm like, oh my God. Why do they have to bring real life stuff into this? Like, it doesn't exist in this universe of Resident Evil. Microsoft and Sony aren't in Resident Evil. They aren't in the universe of Resident Evil, So anytime they bring up these references like Google, Facebook, Elon Musk, like all these things, it's like, dude, stop doing that. Anyway, he's explained that he can, edit their stuff, and that is the truth about the children. And then it cuts to the present day, which is the future, finally, after the whole episode, and it ends with the reveal of Billy in the helmet. She takes it off, and she's all grown up now, and it ends, and it cuts to black. So she finally sees Billy after years. Doesn't really say exactly how long, but years. So that's episode 5. Again, it just kind of gets worse from here, guys. Episode 6, Someone's Little Girl. And this opens up with Wesker killing Rubio as he injects him. Him and Evelyn get in some argument because he says, oh, I told you I could have killed him, this and that, so he's dead. But Billy and Jade in the present day, where they're finally facing each other, we find out that Billy is now working with Umbrella, and, she is just a part of running the shit now. And, but she is still infected. So, she still has to deal with being infected, apparently, after all this time. She's saying her time is up. So, she takes the tracker out of Jade's arm, to kind of look out for her, like, hey, this is how they've been tracking you this whole time. And they take it out of her arm. So she leaves with the head specimen, and shortly after, she actually reunites with her old group, which are all on, like, this boat, and her family's on there, Arjun and B, which is her family. And, they have a sweet moment where they're like, oh, we're here. But then it's also that moment where, it's kind of awkward because she's kind of trying to tell her husband all the stuff that's going on. She believes that her, father is dead, like Wesker's dead, because that's what Billy told her. Billy tells her that. But yeah, they start dissecting the Screamer's head. And so her and Amrita, which is her other friend from the group before, they're both kind of into the science, breaking stuff down, and they do that. But within doing that, one of the nights they wanted to get clearance of getting a Zero on board to test something else further along in the process. Now, within doing so, Wesker, like Wesker normally does, and in the Wesker family, sometimes they take things into their own hands. Well, Jade did that here, and she goes into a boat and tries to grab a Zero, brings it on board, tries to show her daughter, what she's doing, because her daughter, like, finds out while she's up or whatever. And within doing so, the Zero breaks out and escapes, and it kills Amrita, and it kills, who's also pregnant. So, that's a big moment where the husband's like, you motherfucker, you killed him, and you brought him on this boat, because she admits it immediately. She's like, I tried to bring the zombie on the boat, whatever. Again, very stupid, like, just stupid writing, right? Like, just, why would you do that? Like, you knew it was wrong, and then right when it happens, you're like, I'm sorry I did it. Like, sure, people do that, but, like, you have been in this outbreak for years. I mean, you've been through it all since New Raccoon City. She even has the tattoo on her and shit. Like, she's an OG. Jade, she has, like, she was a part of that. Why would you go off and bring a Zero, a zombie? It's a fucking zombie, ladies and gentlemen. It's a zombie. Why would you not think about that and then just kill your friends, right? and put your daughter at fucking danger. Like, oh yeah, I finally have my family back after all this time. Yeah, finally meet them on a boat. Let me bring danger right to the fucking boat, which is like, there is nothing on that boat that can hurt them. They are at sea. They're going. There's no enemies that are going to like attack them, really. I mean, anything's possible, but they were safe. Like, they had the specimen head, and that was it. Like, why the fuck would you even do that? Doesn't make any sense. So yeah, poor writing there. Because Rubio died from what Wesker did, and him being the one person that, Evelyn wanted to get information from, she ends up capturing Wesker. And with him throwing Wesker into a prison cell and locks him up, and all of a sudden the wall on the side there kind of saws out, and then all of a sudden Wesker looks through. He's like, what the hell? And he looks through and he's like, hey bro, and it's a Wesker clone looking back at him, talking to him. And that's how episode 6 ends. And yeah, so we get into the Wesker clones, which people talked about that kind of being the rumor ahead of everything. But yes, Wesker in this show is, there's clones of Wesker. There's multiple clones. So that brings us to episode 7, Parasite. And this opens up with the Arkley Mountains in 2005, and this goes into the Wesker clones. The real Wesker walks down, looks like a bootleg Blade, but as they get attacked by Umbrella soldiers, and he wants to destroy all the evidence. He kills the one Wesker, and the real Wesker kills the one Wesker, and he leaves the two Weskers, which is Albert and Bert. And it turns out that Bert has been locked up for years. So the clone has been locked up for years without him knowing that Albert, the other clone, was living a more normal life. Yeah, so that is kind of what goes on with Wesker. This is kind of like the episode where it unravels, this is a clone of Wesker. And yeah, so within all of that stuff, while we find out the stuff with Wesker in the past, we find out about what's going on with Wesker. Why does he have to inject himself with whatever he injects himself with every day? Well, it turns out it is the blood of his daughters. He needs it to survive. His cells are breaking down. With every clone has the same problem where, it's almost like he's just trying to, keep himself alive just as long, just to keep it going. But the clock's ticking, right? So it's almost like it's inevitable that the clones are going to break down, and that's exactly what is happening. So it happens to any Wesker clone, apparently. And so that is kind of what, leads to all of that. Now we go to present day in the attack right now. We saw Jade get the attack on board with the zombie that killed their friend. And as this all happens, Umbrella soldiers come and attack the boat because it turns out there's a tracker in the specimen head. So they also come after that. So that brings them right to them. And we also see Bert escape and try to, pick up his daughters from school, pick up Wesker's daughters from school. He's like, I got you, bro. And he, goes off and does his thing. And he takes them to Olive Garden, where he takes the liking to the breadsticks, the unlimited breadsticks, and just boasts about that and tries to explain to them what the fuck is going on, as they suspect that it's not even their dad, because clearly Bert acts a lot different than Albert. And Albie was the other one that got shot. So Albie, Bert, and Albert, they're your clones there. And it kind of goes into, again, the real Wesker dying in a volcano, but Bert knows about the volcano part. And the OG Wesker, the clones that he made, they can turn 20 within 6 months. Like, they age rapidly. So I think that's also just kind of like, that's part of that. Then Albert created Jade and Billy, and he engineered their blood basically to fix the issues. But so he's basically using their blood to stay alive, and that's what he is injecting himself with. So that's pretty crazy. We kind of find all that out, and they find all this information out, especially when they go back to the lab, because they get, attacked. They get back, taken back by Evelyn and everyone else. And when they go back to the lab, and Bert gets, Bert just fucks people up, by the way. He shows his powers to start punching soldiers. They eventually, capture him. And they're like, this is why you can't be out. Now, this is presented in front of the daughters as they don't want to believe the truth of what's happening. But they find out that it is, in fact, true. So Evelyn doesn't bullshit them. And Billy wishes death upon her father, Wesker. And then when we go into, the present day, we find out that, Evelyn is now, in the future anyway, is still there, but being controlled by Billy. And Jade walks in, and there's a dance number. The dance number, chat room. Evelyn has a dance number. Now, this is like, in the present day. So Evelyn in 2022, I don't think was controlled by Billy Wesker, who was a fucking kid. They don't really explain if she was controlled back in the day by anyone. But then now she's being controlled by Billy on this like tablet thing. Before you find that out, she's doing this dance number to Dua Lipa, Don't Start Now. And that is what she's dancing to. And then she says, stop. And then Billy comes in and it's like, I've been controlling her the whole time. I don't think she was actually controlling her the whole time. But what this indicates is that Billy is in charge of Umbrella now, and that she is in where she used to be, where Evelyn used to be. So that is kind of where the tables have turned. And she is kind of taking after Albert Wesker in that regard. She's trying to keep that in line. She never really left with Umbrella, even though she, originally thought there was nothing wrong with them and all this stuff. She now turned into a villain, basically. And the episode ends with her breaking the test tube, which brings all of the zeros to them, which overruns all of them. So that leaves us with the final episode of the season, episode 8, Revelations. And Evelyn shows Wesker the Tyrant in the test tube, but that's all you'll see of him in this show, or season, sorry. Because, they don't really show it in this episode. Sorry to break it to you. They show the killer alligator, though, that awakes from the water, that they had tied up, and they wake up, that they, try to use against Billy in this. Because Billy kind of turns around on evil Billy, I should say, to kind of distinguish between old Billy and new Billy. Evil Billy, after Jade throws down that tube that brings the zeros to them, she does a drone attack on all the zombies as opera music plays. I don't know why. Billy obviously is showing her powers at this point and what she was able to do. There's also a scene earlier in the other episode where she punched out someone when she was trying to get her dog back, just to show her powers. You know what I mean? What it's doing to her. And Billy's able to get out of this, though. With the scientist, she jabs the needle in his eye, which is pretty brutal. It's a pretty bloody scene. And I honestly also don't know why, Jade and Simon would leave the dog with the drug bomb. That's all like loopy and fucked up. That's kind of weird. But yeah, they did that. And they try to just kind of fill in the rest of the stuff with Billy and Jade in the past while wrapping up the present day really quickly in this last episode. So again, it just feels like it's all happening very quickly, very snappy, just to try to all finish it up for the season. Billy does end up getting overtaken and ends up biting Simon, which leaves Evelyn to shoot Simon in the head, which is pretty crazy because she just doesn't even want to risk it. So Billy gets overtaken in this state after she escapes from the scientist, and she ends up biting Simon. And then in return, Evelyn shoots Simon dead because of what could actually happen to him. And so there is Simon just completely out the door already. It turns out all the Weskers have an escape plan, because they had an escape plan for Jade's daughter, B, who ends up having the escape bag, and is out on the island on the boat because her intelligence is, amplified. She's actually, they try to say she's, very accelerated in her skills. She's, obviously growing very fast. So she can handle her own if she's able to escape, but she's still a little kid. So she's out on this island, and then you have the alligator come out. They kill the alligator in this, short, very brief scene. And so the season kind of ends off on a note where they kind of wrap up the origin of them kind of getting away from what they used to know, which was Wesker. Wesker stays behind in the lab as everything falls apart. Bert offers to leave with them, so he takes them with them as they have a little note with Ada Wong reference on it. Oh my God. And then in the present time, Billy escapes, evil Billy, when she shoots Jade in the stomach while taking her daughter B, and it leaves on a cliffhanger. It just kind of ends like very abruptly, kind of just with all the events, without even knowing if this may get continued or not. They might continue it, who knows? But yeah, that is episode 8 of Resident Evil, and that is the season 1 in completion. And as you can see, as each episode kind of came up and I kind of brought up what was happening, what was being introduced, it just kind of became more and more of like, all right, some Easter eggs, but then it also became more of just like all over the place, and none of this really was, it really wasn't memorable. It really wasn't as entertaining as I thought that they were really trying to amp it up to be. You know what I mean? I was more entertained by the first 3 Anderson films than I was with this. And even those 3 movies had flaws, various flaws, but there's still certain things that you can pull from it. And at least we got some of the original characters in a couple of those movies. Here it's really just trying to do its own thing. And within doing that, it just kind of really, I don't know, it just kind of leaves a bad taste in the fans' mouth, and they really don't care about making the other fans happy. It's just more of like, okay, let's just do our own thing because we have this property we can do our own thing with, and they kind of did. And the writing was just really piss poor in many aspects, especially the references between Pornhub, 4chan, and all these like weird, just so stupid, just like really bad writing. And like I said, I think a lot of the really bad writing came from when they would always go back to 2022 and they would show these kids and do all this shit, and it would always be even the writing in the all across the board. I mean, whether it's the past, the present, these 8 episodes, I just feel like it started to really get weaker and weaker as the episodes went on. And then I was just completely like, wow, this is just a drag, it didn't really do too much for me, guys. But again, if you liked it, that's fine. I know there's people that really are enjoying it, whatever level of fan you are on, but I'm just trying to tell you as like an actual fan, if you're watching this, save yourself the time, just watch another series, watch something that's good, watch something that's like original, and, don't really waste your time with this, if you're someone who's open to it and you actually thought that the trailer and everything looked good, watch it, you know what I mean? Then you probably won't be disappointed if it's up your alley. Or if you were a fan of Resident Evil, the final chapter, you'll probably like this, if you're a fan of stuff like that, you'll probably like this. I think it's safe to say that with this, though, this is the worst live adaptation of Resident Evil. Welcome to Raccoon City was at least a tier above this, but that's not saying much. It's still at the bottom of the shit barrel, in my opinion. But, it is what it is, guys. They're always going to do this with these properties. I try to save you guys some time and talk about what went down in these episodes that were worth talking about in this review, to try to break it down and try to make sense of it all, but also just to try to take notes on stuff that I just thought was completely ridiculous and just thought it was just like, just a real shit show, once it got to a certain point. And yeah, it just really wasn't consistent. The effects were okay, but the new enemy designs didn't really do anything for me either. The new, enemies they tried to throw in, they didn't really do much for me. The zombie dog looked cool. The liquor looked cool. The Zeros looked pretty cool with their makeup. But I just wish they didn't really do the running zombie thing. I wish they kind of kept the zombies to what we were used to. I saw that change as completely unnecessary because you could still make it just as intense. The slower moving zombies have been around for a while, and we've always seen them in certain situations that could make it stressful and certain depictions. And yeah, I just wish that they also took that route. So it didn't really do much that was new. It didn't really try to make new ground, even though it tried to make it seem like it was trying this new idea and direction. It just really fell off, and it was just really cringy at times and just very forgettable. Yeah, so this is a no for me. You know, I'll check out season 2 and review season 2 to try to let you guys know what's going on with that, if that ever even comes out. Just because it's my job to review all things RE, but I'm not going to be making 1,000 videos on this thing. This thing is just going to be review, spoiler-free review, and in-depth review, and then we'll just move on to the games again until they decide to shell out another live-action video game adaptation of Resident Evil, Monster Hunter, whatever else the property is that they're going to put out live action. What people think of it, it's a matter of your opinion. If you enjoyed it, that's fine. If you're like me and you're just kind of like shaking your head at most of the stuff, most of the time, I was just like, oh my God, no. I'm still definitely disappointed and just kind of like bummed out again, but I'm happy that I can at least review it for you guys, and I can just be honest in this, platform that I have, and just be like, hey, this is how I feel, and hopefully I can warn some of you guys to stay away and fill your time with something a lot better. 8 episodes of this is that's a long time. So, I dedicated the time so you guys don't have to. So that's it, and that's that for this podcast episode, guys. As the summer of RE continues, don't forget to smash that like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell. Stay tuned for more LTRE content on all fronts, more live streams, more podcasts. I got a lot of stuff coming up, so stay tuned, guys, and I'll catch you next time. A big shout out to everyone that supports me on Patreon and YouTube memberships. YouTube members grants you access to voting on content with custom badges and emojis for chats. Patreon gives you the same voting privilege, but even more. Gain access to uncut recording sessions, weekly exclusive Patreon shows, and live hangouts on Patreon. Tiers start at just $1. Thank you so much for your support, and I will catch you next time.